Welcome to the Tip In Maple Leafs podcast. I'm Chad.
And I'm Bill.
On today's show, we're going to talk about the Seattle expansion draft. Ooh, was that exciting. Kerfoot stays, and Jared McCann, we hardly knew ya. Hyman, is he staying? Is he going? He's probably going. I think he's going. Dubas's belief, not just belief in this core, his double down bet his life and his whole career on this team. The NHL draft that happened this weekend, who the Leafs picked, the cap space, and what his Dubas got planned for free agency. So we're going to touch on all that. This is going to be a short little tip in. And sometimes those are perfect tip ins, just a nice quick one.
Nice quick tip in. But I'll tell you what, man, I am absolutely bursting at the seams with excitement. I mean, the Leafs have been so busy over the weekend making incredible moves to improve the team. Like, I just am so excited about where they're going. Oh, wait a second.
They saw what happened these last few years in the playoffs, and they say, we need a fundamental change. And it's just been sweeping through. Jared McCann, no longer a Maple Leaf. I mean, that one, that was just, I couldn't believe it. You know, shocks went through my system, went through the entire city. No, nothing has changed at all. It's the same core. Kyle Dubas is basically, he's come out on every radio show this week, every TV show, every interview he could do, and basically said, yeah, no, we're going back with this team, and this team can win.
Yeah.
That's basically it. He believes in this team.
There was moves flying around all weekend long, Friday, Saturday at the draft. Some crazy prices being paid for some of these guys, no doubt about it. Like what teams are giving up and all that.
Some not so much.
No, a couple.
Detroit steals a goalie out of Carolina for a third-round draft pick.
Probably the best move.
Something the Leafs need. And then signed him to not that much money. So
no, exactly. 3 years, $3 million per. So yeah, there's been some good moves like that. Sneaky Stevie Y there, like he always gets it done. But you know, as far as the Leafs, so moving and shaking. Kyle Dubas, no, not moving or shaking, neither.
No,
not like he can do much because he's so in love with the goddamn fucking guys on the team that haven't won a goddamn thing. But yeah. Why make a fucking deal? Why do anything?
No, he's doubling down. Well, he doesn't. I mean, the Leafs don't have any money.
Why don't they have any money?
Because he's tied it to the core of this team.
And he's so reluctant to move off of any of them.
Exactly. So they don't really like a lot of the moves that were happening. A lot of the moves that were happening were guys getting traded and then signing big contracts. Like Seth Jones goes to Chicago, signs 7 by 9.5.
All they gave up was
Leafs don't have any room to do something like that.
But like all they gave up, the Hawks, to get him basically were picks. Like they basically stole him for like 2 first rounds and a second.
Well, because he gave a list of teams that he would go to. And it was like 3 teams.
I know. So I don't think that was an option. Like, I don't think the Leafs were an option there anyway. But man, it would have been fucking nice. Like,
well, forget about Seth Jones. Let's start with the Seattle expansion.
Yeah.
And then we'll go there. So the Leafs, leading up to the expansion, the Leafs send Hallander and a 7th round pick to Pittsburgh for Jared McCann.
Yeah.
What did you think about this move? For me, I thought this was them trying to change the team, like hoping that Seattle would take Kerfoot.
I didn't think that much of it.
I think he was doing it to protect Hall and to protect either Kerfoot or McCann.
Yeah, of course. That's where it was at. But I think, the deal was only made basically to, okay, like they're going to protect 4 defensemen. So, yeah, we'll lose Kerfoot or we'll lose McCann. That's it. But maybe the deal was Ronnie Francis was so high on McCann and the guy they ended up taking from Pittsburgh, Tanev, who's a hell of a fucking hockey player. I'd love to see him on the Toronto Maple Leafs. Gritty as fuck, that guy. All you have to do is take one look at Tanev's mullet and you know it's fucking game over.
Oh, yeah. But you just turn around and skate off the ice when you see that coming.
So here's what I don't get. Like, if Dubas doesn't make that deal, I guess Toronto does end up losing Kerfoot and Pittsburgh either loses McCann or Tanev. So here's a way that Ron Francis was able to get both the guys he wanted from Pittsburgh, and he's just like, keep Kerfoot. I don't give a fuck. Like, whatever. So he grabs McCann and he grabs Kerfoot and Tanev, and the Leafs basically lose a seventh and a prospect in the expansion draft.
And I guess like Pittsburgh just thought, well, we're going to lose one of these guys. We might as well get something for one of them. There were rumors McCann wasn't great in the dressing room and things like that, but I don't know.
But they ended up losing both. Pittsburgh.
Right, but they got something.
Yeah, but they could have kept McCann, and they would have only lost one of those guys. I don't really get it.
Yeah, and I don't get why, if Toronto really wanted McCann and they wanted Kerfoot gone, why didn't you just wait till after the expansion draft to make the trade?
Unless like Hackstall had a deal like with fucking Keith or whatever, and Dubas saying like, yeah, we'll take if you get McCann, like we will take McCann. He's our guy, not Kerfoot. So maybe Dubas did it knowing I'm making this deal. I'm giving up the prospect.
But if he did that to
I'm losing McCann.
If he did that to protect Kerfoot,
would that surprise you?
It really makes me shake my head. Like
nothing surprises me anymore with this
fucking
guy.
It's one thing to be in love with Matthews and Tavares and Marner and Nylander. I get it. You sign these guys, they have max potential. But when you start falling in love with the Kerfoots and Engvalls and you can't part with them, well, we got some serious problems. Serious problems. If you think like, Kerfoot is the difference in winning a championship, we got some serious problems.
No, and dude, we talked about Kerfoot last podcast. Like, I'm not in love with Kerfoot. I don't hate him. I don't love him. Like,
he's a piece that can move.
100%. He was decent in the playoffs. No doubt. He stepped up without a doubt, but they still lost, and he makes $3.5 million. The Leafs have like just under 10 million available in cap space. Guess what? It'd be nice to have an extra 3.5. Like, yeah, then you got to replace him. I get that, but I don't know. Like,
I'm pretty sure
$3.5 million.
I'm pretty sure you could find another Kerfoot for less than $3.5 million. Like
you would think,
and that's only going on the assumption that I get why they protected Hall, a right-handed defenseman playing in your top four, making $2 million. You're not going to find that anywhere else. But if you made that deal to protect Kerfoot, we got problems, man. We got problems because $3.5 million or Kerfoot, I can't tell you which one is more important right now. I think the $3.5 million is more important to the team than Alexander Kerfoot.
I think so. It gives you more wiggle room, but then you're looking for a third line center, I guess, right? Like that's the thing. Like,
yeah, he barely played third line center this year.
Well, he probably will be this year, unless there's a move that is yet to come. But
anyway, so
maybe he just doesn't want to, like, he didn't want to lose him for nothing. He just feels like Dubas feels there's value there, and then he could get something. He'd be able to move that money and get something in return. Maybe. I'm hoping, kind of.
We won't know. We'll find out more as the summer progresses. But so just on the expansion draft.
Oh my God.
How bored were you watching that?
I can't even believe I watched it because I knew all the fucking picks ahead of time anyway. So I'm like, what am I even doing watching this fucking thing? But I watched it anyway. Like the picks all leaked out. Like Frank Saravelli was all over it. Gary Bettman's new arch enemy, fucking Frank Saravelli, ruined every single pick.
I know, all day. I think there was I think only Detroit's pick hadn't been leaked out by somebody, not just Frankie, but by somebody. I watched it too, and you said this to me. We were talking on the phone after the expansion draft, and you said this. How come the NHL just can't do something right when it comes to these events?
They can't do any event right. Nothing.
Like, I don't get it. Like, you should be able to make this entertaining for the fans and something cool. And it looks like a high school production when they put this shit on. It never looks like the NFL and NBA and MLB. It never does.
Right. The one thing I will say is that one thing I think they do right. I didn't mention this to you when we were talking on the phone. If your team is involved, I do like the expansion draft lottery where they're counting up like to see who gets the first pick overall. I do like that. I think that's maybe the only cool thing that they do. That could still be more exciting too, but it's not that exciting if you don't have a team in the race. But the expansion draft, like we were talking, like the All-Star game, like
you're talking the draft lottery, like
the draft lottery. Yeah.
Okay, you said the expansion draft.
Or sorry, no, the draft lottery. The draft lottery.
Yeah, no, that does build a little bit of suspense. But other leagues do draft lotteries too. I just felt like It was cool. The people drinking. I like the Kraken jersey. I think it's kind of cool.
Yeah, sure.
But
cool logo.
It just felt like an NHL production.
It like most things that Gary Bettman and the NHL do, it fell flat. Like you were mentioning about like the Winter Classic and the outdoor games. Yeah, of course they do. The league does those.
Yeah, when we were talking on the phone, I said those are something that people outside of hockey can get into.
But that's kind of a no-brainer. Like you put the rink in a bigger baseball stadium, or like they do the outdoor, wherever you put it, it just looks cool. The setting's cool. The atmosphere is cool.
People want to sit outside in a football stadium in January and drink beer and watch something on New Year's Day. Right. It's a cool thing.
But I don't know. Just most things, they like the expansion draft and the All-Star game. It's just they always seem to miss the mark. I don't know. Bettman, he's just like, I don't know, man. I think they need to hire younger, fresher minds with like a new way of like how we're gonna do this. Like they're launching.
Bettman's only been there since 1993.
Oh no, I know. They're launching fish through the fucking Seattle fish market to make the goddamn picks in the expansion draft.
I know.
Like seriously.
And I get they brought in Seattle people.
NFL guys, former NFL or NBA guys like the Supersonics and the Seahawks, and like can't pronounce the fucking names if their life depended on it.
Here's what I would do. I would have every team via satellite bring out all their unprotected players to sit in a row.
Yeah, that would be great.
And not know which one of them is going to be picked, and then have to hear it and get their reaction live on TV. Yeah. So they're just like, Alexander Kerfoot, welcome to Seattle. And then zoom in on Kerfoot immediately just to see if he's happy or if he's like, fuck.
All the guys that every team left unprotected for each team.
Bring them out.
That would be...
Or bring them there and sit them live on stage.
You see the guys that are excited for like fist pumping that they're staying or like
the guy who got picked from Buffalo who's just like, yes.
Yeah.
Thank God.
Yeah, live reaction. Yeah, that would be great, man.
None of this like, oh, we know ahead of time and we're going to fly you in and you can come out and meet the fans. No, I don't want that. I want you have no idea what's going to happen and you're going to sit in a row just like a reality TV show.
I think that's a great idea. And just before we leave the expansion draft, like obviously, I don't know, like I don't think the broadcast was very good the way they did the picks. I think it sucked. It looked cool outside, the water in the background, like it looked cool. But who, in regards to who they took, they left a lot of guys on the table, man. Someone did a mock team of like guys that were left unprotected and they didn't take, and it was almost like not almost. It was probably like a better team on paper than the guys that they took.
On paper, yeah. There were a lot of
Tarasenko, fucking JVR. Like there was a lot of guys that like Carey Price, Brait Holtby, like a lot of guys. Like I don't know.
Yeah.
Star goalie, like the Drieger kid or whatever, the guy from Florida who they're counting on. Like I know they picked 3 young goalies.
Yeah.
Maybe a proven goalie, a winning like
when Vegas took Fleury.
Well, look how that fucking worked out.
Yeah, it worked out okay.
Without Fleury,
they went to
where
a cup
are they
final,
at?
But everybody goes to a cup final.
No, I know. Without Fleury, what kind of playoff success does that team have in their first 4 seasons or 3 seasons?
Oh, not much. He was
probably not much.
And he brought. I guess they're kind of banking on Mark Giordano for the sort of
but
without the
power. Without the goaltending, you're done.
Vegas took James Neal and Fleury, and they could hang their pictures outside the stadium, and they had like a little star power. I don't really know who you have on the Kraken that's star power.
Nobody. Jordan Eberle? Like, yeah,
I guess Eberle's your guy, right?
Okay, how many people in Seattle know who the fuck Jordan Eberle is?
No, and he doesn't have that same like Fleury had, he had won cups. He had like this.
And he's got
resume coming.
He's got charisma too. He's got charisma.
And James Neal was a sniper.
He's got charisma too.
Yeah. So it's kind of a boring team. Seattle took a boring team.
Very boring. Very boring.
But Ron Francis is kind of a boring team.
Are you surprised they didn't take Price?
Oh, I knew they weren't going to take Price.
But do you not kind of think that's insane? Like, just take him. Why the fuck wouldn't you just take him?
Isn't it funny that Montreal's like, oh, he's so banged up, so many injuries. Day after the draft. Yeah, no, his surgery went well. He'll be ready to go on day 1.
I just cannot believe they left Carey Price unprotected and Ron Francis was like, no, pass.
Because Jake Allen would have been taken.
I know, but like taking an awful chance there, not Like,
Yeah.
willing to lose Price. I just think it's crazy. And I also just think it's crazy that they didn't take him, because hurt or not, they were still going to take 2 other goalies anyway. So they could have left the kid in Ottawa. They took one of the Ottawa goalies. They could have left him, still taken the other 2. And like, maybe it works out with Price. Maybe it doesn't. I don't know. Anyway, coulda, woulda, shoulda, didn't.
Coulda, woulda, shoulda.
I'm kind of glad they didn't in regards to Montreal, because now they're still like handcuffed to that long. Like, they could have just like that been out from the Price contract and the Weber contract. Boom, $20 million available.
It's true. It's true.
So,
But I never thought Seattle was going to take Carey Price. There was too many question marks around it. Anyway, the expansion draft, it was what it was. Leafs lost somebody who was never on the team to begin with. They basically gave up Hallander and a 7th round pick to Seattle. Yeah. That's basically the only thing they lost from the team.
No biggie. Kerfoot stays for now. We'll see what
Kerfoot stays, holds. But one man I think more important to Leaf fans is probably leaving, and that brings us to Zachary J. Hyman.
Yeah, there doesn't seem like a probably about it. It seems like I was reading the thing.
He's gone, man.
Yeah, I was reading what the agent said. It's as good as over. It's just a matter, and Dubas just okay. The whole sign and trade, that's what the holdup is here, right? Dubas doesn't want to bend.
No.
And like, obviously, Kenny Holland wants the extra year to bring the AAV down, right?
Yeah. Yeah, so Kenny Holland will save about $500,000 a year for 7 or 8 years off the salary cap if they do a sign and trade and he can get Hyman at 8 years.
It's a lot of cash.
It's a lot of cash. And a lot of Leaf fans are saying, well, just take whatever you can get. Like, you're going to lose them for nothing.
Okay.
But I get what Dubas is saying. He's like, that $500,000 is
it's going to hurt them.
It's going to be more. It's worth more than a 6 or 7 round pick.
He wanted a second, apparently.
Yeah. It's basically like if you called me and you're like, Chad, come over to my house and clean the shit out of my toilet. And I'm like, how much are you going to pay me? And you're like, I'll pay you $1. And I'm like, no, thank you. And then you're like, oh my God. Well, now you have nothing. Now you don't have it. That's basically where they're at right now.
That's basically right. Kyle Dubas on potential Hyman sign. Kyle Dubas on the potential Hyman sign and trade with Edmonton. I know that there's a narrative that we should just get something, but when you're saving a team significant dollars on the salary cap, that comes with the cost, and we're not going to bend on that. So reiterating, that's just his actual quote.
Yeah, like, I agree with it. The only problem I have with it is now you're going to get tough.
400. Like, fuck saving Edmonton $400,000 or $500,000.
Like, you couldn't have said that to Mitch Marner a couple years ago.
Yeah, we're not going to bend on that.
$500,000 is a lot to the salary cap.
Bends on fucking everything else, but we're not going to bend on that.
That's the only. But I do agree he shouldn't bend on it. And I also saw someone post all the sign and trades that have happened in the last year. There's been nothing lower than a 3rd round pick given up.
Really?
In a sign and trade. So why would Dubas take a 6th or 7th?
No.
Well, and this would be the longest sign and trade. Most of them are 3-4 years. This would be an 8-year sign.
I'd take a 3rd though. Like,
yeah. And I think he would too, but Holland's not willing to part with a 3rd.
So then he's just going to wait until Wednesday and sign him for a 7-year deal. That's what's going to happen.
Yeah. So it's going to be more of a cap hit, which he probably doesn't want. But if he's not going to break and Dubas isn't going to break, then that's it.
I heard it could be as high as 5.5. It might be 5.1.
Wow.
But either way, it's out of the. I still have not heard where the Leafs are at with what they've offered him. Did they offer him 3.5? Did they offer him 4? Like, where would they be at on? Was it an insulting offer? Is it less than
it wasn't an insulting offer.
Well, it better not be 3 less. It can't be like 3.5. It's got to be like. Would they offer him less than what Kerfoot's making? Because that's just insulting. I'd be like, fuck you.
I think it was Elliot Friedman who said, like,
it's got to start with a 4.
They made a decent offer, but they made what they could make.
Like, do you think
they couldn't go above? They probably offered him 4 by 5, $20 million.
Okay, so that's half of what he's going to get. Of course, you're going to take the money and run on that, right?
Right.
You're
And
going to leave $20 million on the table?
exactly. And you can sell, this is your home, and you can have commercials and stuff, but $20 million is $20 million.
Dude.
And you get to play with Connor McDavid.
100%. He's going from playing with Austin and Mitch. Now he's going to go play with Draisaitl and McDavid. Two better hockey players. Two better players.
And it's what he does best. Like, he shines playing with superstars, just digging and grinding, getting them the puck. I'll tell you something. When he signs that contract, Mike Babcock is going to have a tear in his eye. He was so proud of Zach.
Yeah, no, you're 100% right.
But good for Hyman, man. When if it does come true and he goes, he deserves every penny. And he is a gem of a hockey player. He played amazing in Toronto. I don't think the contract's going to pan out. I think 6-7 years, maybe 5 into the contract, they're going to regret it. But for those first couple of years, he's going to be so loved in Edmonton. Like, the fans are going to, anyone listening from Edmonton right now, you are going to love this guy.
Oh my God.
You're going to love Zach Hyman.
It's look, and we'll talk more about Zach, like, when it's official, like next weekend after free agency has been going for a couple of days. We'll talk more about Zach in the next podcast, but so we can save it for that. But it is tough, like, losing Hyman. Like, I'm not gonna, like, I know that the contract 7-8 years would be at that price would be probably a mistake, obviously.
So 100% it'd be a mistake.
But to me though, it still hurts that, like, for me, he's the heart and soul of the fucking team. Every fucking night. And it's tough to see that go. Okay. I don't think there's anybody there to fill that slot. And personally, maybe in free agency, we'll get into that in a little bit here. Like, is there a Hyman, like, light available? Maybe, but it's a hard guy to replace, man. Nearly impossible.
Do you think, getting back to the core of this team that Dubas has been defending all week as being like the core that can bring home the championship, do you think any part of them, like, kind of regrets the contracts they signed as they see all these guys leaving? Kapanen, Janssen, now Hyman's got to go. Well, you know what I mean? Like, good players that can help you win championships, that can build out your bottom 6. Hyman plays in the top 6. You're losing these guys because the team can't afford to keep them.
Right.
And the GM is doing it all for you to keep you intact.
Yeah, but it's more, is it on them or is it more on Dubas and Shanny? Really? They gave them the fucking money.
Yeah, it's on Dubas.
How did they think it was going to work out? Okay, to be fair, they thought the cap would probably be higher than flat.
They thought the cap would be like 6-7 million higher than it is right now.
Dude, they literally now have, it's gone from bad to worse. Now they literally have half of their pay, 50% of their payroll is tied up in 4 fucking players, and they're all forwards. The cap's like $81.5 million. The 4 of them are making $40 million.
I don't understand why the league can't make cap exceptions. Like, you can freeze the cap because of COVID. Can you not say something like, okay, the players still get their cash, but all the players' salaries on the team, the cap hit goes down 20%, 15%.
Dude, we were
like, why can't they do anything like that? Because, I don't know, you're not going to raise the cap. Everyone was expecting the cap to go. No one saw COVID coming. Why can't you do that so teams can actually – it's such a fucking boring offseason for teams like Toronto.
What would we talk about on this podcast if the NHL didn't have a salary cap?
We'd be talking about how Hyman just signed a fucking 10-year, $50 million deal. And
like literally, if there was – and I think I was mentioning this to you the other night.
Janssen, Kapanen, they'd still be on the team.
100%. Other teams or other leagues have a luxury tax. If you can afford to go over, and then you can, if you want to go over by 20 million, knock your fucking socks off.
Isn't the NBA's dollar for dollar?
I'm pretty
Basically,
sure.
If you spend $1 million over the cap, you got to pay $1 million into luxury tax.
Yeah, so it gets filtered out towards the bottom teams, and it's good for everybody. You can spend it if you want. And the bottom teams that don't want to, they benefit from going over.
You're talking about leagues who cater to the teams that bring them in the most money.
Why doesn't the NHL do that?
Gary Bettman, since day one, has always catered to the bottom teams. He's always catered to the teams who don't have money. He's always listened to the owners who come from Florida.
Okay,
Ottawa,
but do you
Arizona,
not think he's ultimately hurting the bottom teams by not allowing a luxury tax, the bottom teams would be benefiting.
Do you remember
if there was a luxury tax?
Do you remember
they would be benefiting?
Do you remember when the cap first came in and some of the teams were complaining about that there was a floor that you had to hit?
You had to hit, yeah.
You had to hit a floor in the cap.
Yeah.
And Bettman almost caved on that and took it out of the CBA agreement. But the NHLPA is like, okay, come on. If we've got to go down, then you've got to come up a little bit. And they kept it in. This guy is always catering, where the NBA, they're like, okay, Lakers, you got tons of money, you'll pay a luxury tax. But I mean, we need LA to shine with stars. We need Kobe Bryant's and LeBron James.
Yeah, because they know where their bread is buttered, the NBA.
And they know what sells tickets. Like everyone loves when LA goes on when the Lakers go on the road and they come to town, the buildings sell out all over because they're full of superstars. There's nothing like that in the NHL because everyone's got one superstar, a few middle of the road, and a bunch of guys to fill out the salary cap roster. That's just the way Gary Bettman wants it. He wants it so every team can compete.
Like we're kind of going all over here, but I'll just, you were kind of touching on like cap space, and it kind of, everything kind of ties in. The luxury tax and cap space and Hyman leaving, and they don't have much money to sign guys, and what are they going to do to fill out the roster? But you touched on this, that the big four, all the money tied up there. And because of that, we have lost guys, like you named a few of them, but like I'll go back a few years. I'm probably missing some, but guys that I care about losing. And if we had some of these guys still on the team now, like Matt Martin, Connor Brown, Kapanen, Janssen, you touched on, Uncle Leo Komarov, Bozak, JVR, now Hyman, probably Freddie. Some of those guys have gone for nothing. Some of them have been traded, but a good majority of those guys, they let walk for fucking nothing. And here we go again with Hyman, and looks like probably Freddie too. Leads me to this here.
And there's not one of those guys, like Hyman's walking right now, but Connor Brown, all those guys that you mentioned, they all walked to free up money for those four guys.
Well, that's just it. There was no choice. Dubas, there was no choice. But if Hyman and Connor Brown are exactly what this team needs right now.
Oh my God. If they had Hyman and Connor Brown, if you had Hyman on the top line with Matthews and Marner and Brown on the second line with Tavares and Nylander, your top six is set, man.
Yeah.
And now you've got to go out and you've got to find a cheap Connor Brown and cheap Zach Hyman.
Yeah. Well, Brown's not even making that much money. He's making
still, they couldn't afford him. They had to get rid of that to pay the big boys.
I know it's crazy. He's only he's making less than Kerfoot.
I know he's making less than Kerfoot, but you couldn't afford Hyman and Brown both at like $2.5 million.
No, it's sad. And so you're talking about cap casualties. There's probably the title of the podcast right there. Cap casualties. Look how many guys have been fucking out because of this.
I don't know how to spell casualties.
Well, me neither, but I think we'll figure it out by the time this is over. But
it's like casualties.
I don't know. Whatever. Cap problems. Whatever. I got 99 problems, and they're all the fucking salary cap. But is it the four players' fault? Is it I think management's fault? I think it's everyone's fucking fault. The players wanted the money. They didn't want to leave any money on the table. And management was just like, okay, fuck. Well, let's sign the check. Let's go.
You're right. Everybody's at fault. The players are at fault for fighting and holding out to get money before they had won anything. But management's at fault for fucking bending over and giving it to them.
No, 100%. So I just quickly, I was talking to some dude today online about, he was on a Leafs group, and he mentioned about how he's standing up for how much money they've allocated this amount of money to only four guys, and that they, it's been proven that you can win with a formula like that. And the guy brought up the Chicago Blackhawks, and I'm like, no, man. He's like, yeah, look at 2015 when they won their last cup. They were paying 30% of their salary cap to two guys. I'm like, no. When Chicago won their three cups, the last one being in 2014-15, Kane and Taves were still getting paid slightly over $6 million each. In 2015-16,
right, but the cap was a lot lower. So the percentage of the cap was higher. If they were making $6.5 million and the cap was 68, it's the same as making 10 and having an $80 million cap.
Maybe, but I don't think six.
They didn't sign their big deals till after that. You're right, but they still made a high percentage of the cap. It's just like Pittsburgh won with those 4 players. Crosby was only making his $8.7 million, but the cap was only like $64 million.
I was going to lead into the Pittsburgh thing anyway because of Dubas' comments, like media availability earlier in the week. But just to stay on the Chicago thing for a second, like the whole point that I was going to make there was that like when they won, their 2 stars were making less, and they had Seabrook and Keith they were making less at the time too. But then after that, their final cup in 2015, Kane and Taves fucking shot to the roof. So they should have. They were coming off of 3 cup wins. So guess what? They got their $10 million fucking dollars each.
They deserve to get paid.
Right. But here's the final point: is that since they went to the big ticket, Chicago hasn't won a playoff series since they won their last Stanley Cup in 2015. Has not panned out. And they've been sending guys out the door left and right every season too, because they signed a couple guys to those big ticket contracts. Has not worked out. They haven't won a playoff series since they won their last Stanley Cup.
No, it's yet to be determined, but all the signs point to it's not a good recipe for success to put all your eggs in one basket.
Right.
It's just not going to work.
For just going back to the Pittsburgh thing, what did Dubas say about the Pittsburgh situation?
He was asked about the fact that nobody's, just like you're saying, nobody's ever won with 4 players taking up that percentage of the cap.
And he tried to
4 forwards. That was the question asked.
And he tried to compare it to the Pens, where it's not comparable.
He compared it to the Pens, but then even he said they were taking up more percentage of the cap because Crosby at the time did make a huge percentage of his cap. But then he backtracked and was like, but again, it wasn't 4 forwards. Pittsburgh had 2 forwards, 1 defenseman, 1 goalie, making up a large percentage of the cap. Leafs are trying to do it with 4 forwards.
Right. So the Pittsburgh Penguins had it spread out. 2 forwards, a D, top
Malkin,
D, and the top goalie.
Crosby. I'm drawing a blank on the defenseman here. You got it.
Letang,
and Fleury were all making like 40% of their cap. Well, that's different. If we had a goalie and a stud defenseman and then Matthews and Marner, it might look a little different because you'd be like, all right, well, we're okay in the net. We just need to fill out around the defense and maybe find some Zach Hymans and stuff to fill out the forwards. But when you've got that much money in 2 centers and 2 wingers, the hell do you do? How do you
and the flat cap? It's getting harder. Getting harder.
And that's where it hurts. Dubas she said that all right. Dubas thought the cap was going up. He thought that signing these contracts by this year, they would only be like 25 to 30% of the cap. Unfortunately, they're going to be 40% of the cap, or like you said, close to 50% of the cap.
Well, that's what it is. The cap's only it's flat at $81.5 million.
Yeah, so he didn't expect this. We didn't expect this. That's why I'm saying the NHL needs to cut some slack and be like, all right, you can go over the cap and pay a luxury tax, or the cap hit can go down 15% due to COVID or something. Like, give teams some wiggle room. But
I agree. No, you're right. So Kyle Dubas on the Leafs core roster during his media availability prior to the draft this week, for better or worse, I believe in this group, and I believe that they are going to get it done, and I believe that they're going to win. I believe we're going to see the best version of this group this coming season. I'm willing to bet everything on it. Wow. Like, what a ballsy fucking statement, man. Like, what a ballsy fucking statement to say.
He basically just put a pink slip in ownership's hands and said at the end of the year, get ready to hand this to me if this doesn't work out.
Like, think about what he's saying there. Like, what would make anybody, any Leafs fan, think like, oh yeah, that makes sense.
I always kind of thought Dubas was fluent, and he kind of went with the flow, and he understood that you needed to change on the fly and stuff. But he's almost starting to sound like one of those stubborn general managers who's like, I'm right, you're wrong. Like, the fact that he's so sold on these 4 guys and that everything else around can just be patched up. You know what I mean? I don't get it. If you can sit here and tell me that you don't need guys like Zach Hyman, that you're full of shit. You can't win without guys like Zach Hyman.
No,
you can't win without Connor Brown. You can't win without a $5 million goalie that stands on his head. You're not going to win with a Jack Campbell who will probably get injured after playing 35 games. Like, it's just, you cannot tell me that this is a recipe for success.
Yeah, I don't know.
It's not.
No, but I don't really get this. I don't really agree on the goalie thing, though, to be honest, because like prior to Vasilevsky winning his most recent back-to-back cups with Tampa, if you really go back and look at like from 2010 up until now, like the goalies that were in net for the cups, it's not like a hotbed of like fucking superstars.
No, but what I'm saying is you normally build from the back end out.
No, of course. Sure.
Like the Leafs are just betting on Jack Campbell. Okay, he had a good season. In a 56-game season, he couldn't stay healthy for
it might not work.
A lot of it. It might not work. And you have no backup because you're sold on this. Like, I don't have it in front of me, but we were talking about this earlier. They don't have I don't know the exact number, but their cap space is
around 10 million.
It's around 10 million. It's a little less than 10 million. And they basically need 3 wingers, defenseman, unless you're going to play Liljegren and Sandin. But like I'm talking a defenseman to replace Bogosian and a goalie. And
they can probably add a depth defenseman for $1 million. Like, okay, let's quickly. Let's here before we wrap it up. We'll talk quickly about the draft. There's not much to talk about. I have who they picked in front of me, and then we'll end on like free agency, maybe what they can do realistically, whatever. So they picked the Leafs had 3 picks in the draft. Okay, no first round picks, obviously. The Leafs picked 57th overall in the second round, left winger Matthew Nyes. They picked 153rd overall in the 5th round, right winger Ty Voigt. And they took a goalie in the 6th round, 185th overall, Vyacheslav Peksa. And that's it. 3 picks, man. So
3 picks, no trades. Those guys,
no trades.
Those guys are all 4 years out.
Oh, none of those guys might even get a sniff with the Leafs.
No.
Like maybe the goalie pans out, maybe one of the players pans out, maybe we don't see any of those guys. So it could have just been a whole fucking wasted weekend. But
yeah. I don't know.
Anyway, that was like that was it for the Leafs over draft weekend. That was literally it. But okay, going into free agency here on Wednesday, we'll be back next Saturday because we'll let it breathe for a bit, because like we were mentioning, not when we were talking prior to recording this, we were, I think, talking about the fact that I don't see a big splash coming here on Dubas out of the gates on Wednesday morning.
No, unless he's fucking with us all and just talking shit, but he's actually going to break up the core.
Okay.
But I don't think that's true.
Okay, or if Kerfoot gets traded within the next couple of days or something else happens and maybe they get up to like 15 a minute, maybe Morgan Riley. You want to touch on that for a second?
Well, I don't think they're going to trade Morgan Riley.
Okay, so are we losing another? So is he going to get added to the name?
Yes,
the
this
list
is what
of
Dubas
names?
is saying when he's saying this. He does not give a shit about getting things back. He is going to hug this team to death.
But they're not going to be able to sign Riley to an
No, they're not.
So then another guy leaves for nothing?
Yeah. I know, man. I'm in unless they're way out of a playoff spot by trade deadline.
Okay, if they let Morgan Riley walk for nothing, like their number one defenseman, okay, I think Kyle Dubas should be fired the next day.
Well, he might be anyway because they may get knocked out in the first round. But if they hold on to Riley and they go on a deep playoff run,
Chad,
that's what he's betting on. That is what Dubas is betting on. He's betting on a deep, deep playoff run.
I know, but we're just coming off of that, and look what happened. Like,
hey, I'm in the same boat as you. But after this week, we'll get a better idea of what's going to happen when they start signing free agents. There are guys. I was browsing through the free agents. There are hidden gems in there for cheap, but they're all like Galchenyuk. They're all projects. They all have problems. It kind of reminds me of the movie Moneyball, or the book Moneyball or the actual Moneyball that happened in Oakland. Like, you're basically looking for players that have been casted away to the island of misfit toys.
How'd that work out?
Well, they won a lot of games, but they never won a
World
championship.
Series.
Now they never won a championship. But that's what the Leafs have to do right now. They have to look for guys that have some sort of deficiency, like that have bounced around but have high potential that they can get on the cheap. That is what they have to do.
Well, that's kind of what they've been doing.
Yeah, but they really have to do it this year because you don't like without Hyman, and I don't know, man. Like, if you're betting on Nick Robertson and Galchenyuk and these other people to fill the roles on your team, I'm sorry, you are not going to win a Stanley Cup that way. It's just not going to happen.
No, but I think what he's betting on is like he's keeps blowing smoke up the big guys' fucking asses, right? So I think what he's betting on is like, hey, are you getting the message, guys?
Monster years.
Mitch, are you listening? Austin, are you listening? Like, it's your time. Like, you should be able to put whoever on the fucking wing with these guys, and they should kill it anyway.
And I agree with that. And he basically said that they shouldn't need Zach Hyman. Hyman should need them.
It's like, you got to fill out the roster, no doubt. But the Leafs are going as far as these guys take them. That's what it is. And
the reason the fucking fans are so pissed off is because there is nothing that shows us that these guys can get it done.
No, there's not.
They have done zero in the playoffs. So, yeah, go ahead. Austin will probably score 65 goals this year in a full season. Mitch will probably have 100-plus points. We won't give a shit. On this podcast, we will constantly be like, who gives a shit? Get us to April.
Yeah, no, it doesn't matter.
To April.
It doesn't matter. Like, honestly, like, what is this team going to look like next season? Pretty much the exact same. Everybody's so far, they've made no roster changes other Hyman's leaving, Freddie's leaving, but there's been no moves.
Well, McCann, that hurt.
Yeah, huge loss. A guy that never even fucking.
He was a couple games away from Legends Row.
Didn't even play a shift. Not even a shift.
I don't even think he went to Toronto.
Why would he?
His contract got faxed in and then faxed out.
They're going to look the exact same, I think, because I don't think Dubas is I don't think he's going to take from that roster. I really don't think so. Only they're going to look the same, only like slightly worse.
Yeah,
really.
We said this when we were talking on the phone the other night. He's never really traded a core roster player off this team. He's traded bits and pieces from the team, but he's never stepped up and been like, you know what? I'm pulling an Engvall or a Kerfoot and I'm trading them. Like someone who's been a big part of this team. He's never done that. And now I think it's time he's got to do that.
Dude.
Got to do it.
So like literally, like what are they going to look like next season? They're basically going to be the same team, slightly worse. And like, that's really something to get excited about, right? Yeah. Like, I mean,
can't wait.
What could go wrong? What could go wrong with bringing back the exact same team?
And
it has absolutely
in a tougher division. You probably get Boston or Tampa in the first round. What could go wrong?
What could go wrong with bringing back a slightly worse version of the team from last year that has had absolutely zero fucking playoff success in six chances? This team with 6 cracks at it, right?
Yeah.
What could go wrong? I can't see there being any problems or issues with that.
We have done nothing but defend Kyle Dubas on this podcast.
I know, but it's taken a turn.
It's taken a turn, and a lot of people are like, you know, he has a vision, he has a plan and everything. We get it. We have always defended the moves he's made. We thought he's made some incredible trades. What we're saying is, it's starting to smell a little fishy in here.
But I'm not just like, I still have a lot of time for Kyle. I still do think he is a smart guy, and I'm not just starting to turn on Kyle and Shanny. It's the guys too. Like, I got a lot of time for Mitch and Austin and JT and all these guys, but I'll tell you what, man, like we're JT
just not sold on it.
I'm giving JT a pass because like he wasn't, you know, the playoffs not involved, but I'm telling you what, Mitch and Austin, like, it's going to get a lot harder to continue to like have these guys back if this shit keeps fucking happening. Like, I love them, like the way they play, like when it doesn't count. Like, they're great hockey players, but
man, you want 15 goal October? I got some guys for you.
Yeah, mustache.
You want one goal in the playoffs? I got
a guy for that too.
I can't help you. Yeah, one goal. That's it.
I got a guy
one
for
goal
that
when
too.
you need it. Can't help you.
Yeah.
So, anyway,
We'll see. But
we'll be back.
Look, next weekend, man. But then after that extended break, barring a crazy trade, which neither one of us see happening. But we'll do
next week. It works out perfect because we have a free agency will open. There'll be a few days because I believe if the Leafs are going to make signings, they're going to be in the bargain bin a few days after free agency.
That's the thing. I don't think they're going big fish hunting on Wednesday morning.
It's not going to be 11 o'clock or whatever, 12 o'clock that you hear Leaf signings.
It's see who's left over at 4 p.m.
Yeah, it's going to be Friday afternoon. They're going to be going through the $5 rack to see what they can get. Mm-hmm. Anyway, for the Tippin' Maple Leafs podcast, don't forget to follow us on Facebook and Instagram at the Tippin' Maple Leafs podcast, on Twitter at the Tippin' Podcast, email us at the tippinpodcast@gmail.com. Check us out at tippinsportsmedia.com. And until the Leafs do something this week, no, they'll do something, but we're going to be back next weekend.
Maybe not. Maybe not.
We don't know, but check us out. Thank you for listening. I'm Chad.
I'm Dale.
We will
catch you later.